Hi, everyone. Welcome in. We'll get started right at the top of the hour. Wait for some more folks to join. And just to confirm, Laura, you can see the slide presentation correctly. My computer didn't mess it all up.
That is correct.
Thanks. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar titled Understanding SCV Water's Proposed Water Rate Change. My name is Kevin Strauss. I'm the Communications Manager here at SCV Water. Joining me on our presentation tonight are SCV Water's Chief Financial and Administrative Officer, Rochelle Patterson, and members of her staff, Customer Service Manager, Kathleen Wilson, and her staff, and both Ichiko Kito and Anthony Oleski representing RDN, which is SCV Water's Independent Ratepayer Advocate. Now, we will have time for questions and answers at the end of tonight's presentation. And I would just want to put out at the top for any questions that are related to SCV Water that are not specific to tonight's topic, which is the agency's proposed rate changes. Please feel free to email me at the end of the presentation. My email address is here on this title slide as well as in the chat. Before we get going into the bulk of the presentation, I do want to go over some housekeeping information. Tonight's webinar is being recorded. It's through Zoom only. It's a webinar format, so all microphones and all microphones are muted, all cameras are off, but it is being recorded and it will be made available as soon as possible on the SCV Water website following the workshop tonight. I will be presenting the content of the meeting. All questions and answers, again, will be at the end of the presentation, and answers will be provided in that session. Will be myself moderating questions to Ichiko and Anthony from the Ratepayer Advocate. Please use either the question and answer or the chat function in Zoom to submit your questions, knowing that those questions will only be seen by myself, the panelists, and then directed to Ichiko and Anthony at the end of the session. You can also submit questions that either come up after or you're thinking about them later tonight by going to our rate planning website at yourscvwater.com/rate-planning. And I'll demonstrate where on our website that can be found later in the presentation. There you'll find a ask a question button, which is screenshotted on the right side of this slide, and that takes you to a form submits questions directly to the ratepayer advocate. They respond and we go from there. Now, where are we going to go tonight through our webinars? We're going to look at the plan for the proposed rate changes. I'll look back at the process as it stands so far and the timeline for things to come, why the proposed rate change is needed. We'll dive into water rate structure and understand some of the terminology and what makes up a water rate. Then we'll get into what SCV Water's specific proposed rate changes are for the various types of charges. We'll finish with some customer outreach, a review, and then a look, I mentioned, at some of the resources available as we go through this rate study. And then finally, our question and answer session. So starting with the plan for the proposed rate changes. As you're aware, and the reason you're here tonight is SCV Water is proposing a 5-year schedule of changes to water rates that will affect water use charges, fixed charges, legacy debt charges, and private fire charges. This workshop is one of 2 being conducted in advance of the SCV Water Board of Directors public hearing, which is scheduled for Tuesday, April the 1st, 2025. And this is being done as part of the Proposition 218 process. If adopted, the proposed rates would be implemented on July 1st of each year, starting July 1st, 2025 through July 1st of 2029. I'll look at our rate planning team, who's involved in this process, starting with our finance team and under the direction of the Chief Financial Administrative Officer. They report up to the general manager and the board of directors, but also involved in this process is our independent ratepayer advocate, RDN. They were selected by the board of directors specifically to ensure that rates are equitable, that we have adequate rates to cover expenses, and that the rates both cover the cost of service to provide water and are fair to the customers. They advise the board of directors and provide information to the public before the adoption of any new rates, and they participate extensively in the review of work throughout this process going into the public hearing. And so what is that process and where are we going from here in the timeline? So you'll see here on this slide highlighted in blue is tonight's community workshop on February the 5th. But looking back, this process started in July of 2024 with a kickoff, some data collection, analyzing what rates, what revenue was required to meet expenses, what is the cost of service, what are the rate design, and a look back at that analysis and ensuring that each step of the way the process is being followed. In late fall, early winter, a Proposition 218 notice was drafted and went before the board of directors for approval. That notice was then mailed out to customers on January the 21st, received within the last week or so. And then going into this meeting tonight, there's going to be an identical workshop on March 5th. So if you would like to come back and be part of that workshop too in a month's time, you can. It's going to be the exact same presentation and an opportunity to ask questions of RDN. But again, there's an opportunity to do that any day between now and April the 1st using our website. The Finance and Administration Committee on March the 17th will conduct a preliminary review of some of the comments that have been received, not only through this workshop process and the March 5th workshop, but the comments received through the website, and just talk about what the sentiment has been and where we go leading into the public hearing. And again, the public hearing is Tuesday, April the 1st at 6 p.m. So this is just laid out in timeline form. July of 2024 on the left side, the cost of service and rate study kickoff, the approval of the Prop 218 notice in December, the mailing in January, starting our 45-day public comment period under Proposition 218 on January the 28th, ending on April the 1st with the public hearing at the Board of Directors meeting. So we talk a lot about Proposition 218. If this is your first time going through or not remembering from last time, it's not a very common, not a very frequent process, I should say. It is common. It's something that all public agencies that charge rates have to go through. The Proposition 218 was approved by California voters in 1996. It's known as the Right to Vote on Taxes Act. And on a basic level, it ensures that any taxes or charges on property owners are subject to a majority vote. And there are several requirements under Proposition 218 that public agencies like SCV Water must follow. First, a cost of service study must be completed. And then after that cost of service study is complete, the agency must mail a notice of the proposed rate changes to all property owners and customers of record. That notice must specify what the amount of the fee will be that's being proposed, the basis upon which it was calculated, the reasoning behind needing to propose of rate adjustment, as well as the date, time, and location of a public rate hearing at which the proposed rates would be considered and or adopted. The public hearing requirement under Proposition 218 says that a public hearing must be held, and it can be held no sooner than 45 days following the mailing of a Proposition 218 notice. In this case, SCV Water mailed the 218 notice on January the 21st, tentatively or unofficially opened the comment period on January the 28th, and that is 63 days. So 70 days total, 63 from the opening of the comment period with a 45-day requirement. And again, at the bottom line, you'll see here is that rate increases are subject to a majority protest. So if 50% plus one vote in protest submit a valid written protest against the rates cannot be adopted. And so what does that mean for you as SCV Water's customers? You can participate in this process by protesting. That's perfectly within your right. To file an opposition protest, it must be written under Proposition 218. It's very specific what counts as a valid written protest. It cannot be emailed and it cannot be verbalized at a public meeting. It must be written. It must include your name, either or parcel number, which is on your property taxes, and or your service address, and your signature. And what we've done is include on your Proposition 218 notice above your address on the front of that notice is a validation code. It's a unique ID number. That just helps us verify that your protest is valid, that only one has been counted per parcel, because only one written protest can count per customer of record or per property. And again, all written protests must be received prior to the conclusion of the public hearing on Tuesday, April the 1st. They can be mailed to SCV Water's administration building, which is in the Central Park complex in Saugus. They can be hand delivered to the customer care office through the end of March, and they will then deliver them after that. But again, before the conclusion of the public hearing on Tuesday, April the 1st, you can also bring it with you to that public hearing if you come in person. So more about the public hearing. Again, that public hearing is Tuesday, April the 1st. It's a 6 p.m. start as part of SCV Water's regular Board of Directors meeting. At that public hearing, the board will hear and consider all public comments and written protests. And again, public comment during the public hearing is not the same as a valid written protest under Proposition 218. But at that public hearing, if the property owners or customers of record represent a majority of the impacted parcels in protest, then the proposed rates cannot be adopted. If a majority protest is not achieved, then the board may, but is not obligated to adopt those proposed changes. And again, if they are adopted, the new rates would take effect July the 1st, starting in 2025 through July 1st, 2029, and through that fiscal year 29-30. So why is the proposed rate change needed? Well, SCV Water must balance its growing operational costs while also planning to ensure that we have reliable water supplies and availability for the future here in the Santa Clarita Valley. We do this by investing in capital improvement projects such as pipeline replacements, the construction of storage tanks, and treatment facilities. At the same time that we invest in this infrastructure, we are working on cost-saving measures to help offset expenses and increases. These include by installing solar panels that offset our energy costs. We seek cell tower leases to bring in some additional rental revenue. And we are also working to find other non-operating revenue streams such as grant funding. And at the same time as that, we've brought in a lot of tasks that had been outsourced to conduct them in-house, such as water quality testing. We have our own laboratory on site that tests the quality of our water and saving time and money from having to send samples out for testing. Our staff also completes a good amount of pipeline repair projects in-house, design, inspection, and construction, and perform safety trainings for staff to limit outside expenses. And I mentioned grant revenue previously. Our team has been highly successful in the last 2 years receiving grant funds totaling millions of dollars, which helps to offset any costs that might be passed on. Some additional factors that go into balancing operational costs and revenue coming in, we have to look at factors such as development and weather, but also inflation. And when we look at what our previous rate study was and where we are going from here in the proposal, we have to balance between what our estimate, our educated guess of what inflation may be over a certain time period, and then square that with what it actually was. So in our last rate projection, we looked at the utility and chemical inflation. It was projected to be a 13.2% increase over 5 years. The actual over the last 3 years was 62%. Looking at construction inflation, projected was 8.7 and actual was nearly 21%. Equipment costs, we projected a 3% increase. Those are up 12%. Fuels and automobile costs projected at 9% were up 21. And overall inflation was projected at 7.5%. That came in at 13.61%. So as we look at water rate structure, understanding what the setting process is, what the requirements for revenue are, and some of the terminology that you'll see throughout this process. First, I just want to remind folks that as a public agency that's governed by a board of directors that's elected by customers, SCV Water cannot earn a profit from the services it provides, and it must charge no more than the actual costs associated with providing water service to customers, which is the reason for conducting a cost of service study, having that independently checked and verified that that is correct. When we look at the rate setting methodology, we must ensure that our revenue is adequate to cover expenses, that we mitigate what rate impacts will have on customers, that rates are distributed fairly and in an equitable manner across customers, and that designing rates in that process is practical, that rates are manageable and implementable. Looking at this chart here, you get more of a visual of that. We see on the left side in the blue column our revenues and the green side our costs. Some of the revenues that SCV Water brings in each year is one, it's our water rates. Communication, cell tower leases, and rentals. And as costs get that out of balance, revenue adjustments help to balance that picture back out. So with water rate charges, there are two main charges that you'll see on your bill. You'll see the fixed charge, which is our service charge, or it is the service charge. This is the cost that's based on your meter size, and it is the starting charge that you have each month. Think of it as you're getting in a taxi, and before you even move in the taxi, you're already paying that flat fee. That's what a fixed charge is. The water use charge, on the other hand, is a variable charge, and that will fluctuate based on how much water is being used through that connection each month. There's different types of water use charges. There's potable water, which all customers will pay. This covers the cost of sourcing, treating, and distributing potable water to residences, businesses. And then there's also recycled water. The recycled water charges are only paid by those that have a special design designated recycled water meter. In addition to fixed and variable charges, there's a private fire service charge. This is only charged to customers that have properties that have a separate private fire line, and that's one that's pictured here as a business park. You'll see those around town. These are monthly fixed charges, and it's a readiness to serve charge, which is why those are lower than other monthly fixed charges, is because they're not being used on a daily basis. They're there if needed, and it's just having the ability to serve if those ever have to be activated. Lastly, we have the legacy debt charge. This is one that we've seen a lot of discussion on and a lot of questions that have come in the last few years. What is legacy debt? What does it mean for me? This is a monthly fixed charge that is based on your meter size. And the purpose of it is to ensure that infrastructure costs that were incurred by SCV Water's predecessor agencies are paid for by those who benefited in those service areas at the time that the debt was taken on. So the prior agencies, Castaic Lake Water Agency, Santa Clarita Division, the Newhall County Water District, and the Valencia Water Company. You'll see two charts here, Santa Clarita Water and what the current and the study period proposed rates are. And we'll get into this a lot more in a little bit. So this is just a quick one. Valencia Water on the other side, you'll notice Newhall County is not right there. Newhall County Water District customers, those who were served by Newhall County, had debt at the merger in 2018. That debt was paid off prior to the last rate study, and there's currently no outstanding legacy debt for those customers. Costs are proposed to go down for Santa Clarita Water customers as their principal payments are lower as those obligations reach maturity. Full maturity for Santa Clarita customers will be 2040, 2041, and for Valencia customers, 2048 and 2049. So now the reason we're all here, what are the proposed water rate changes? What does this look like? The first, water use charge. This is the variable charge that will be billed per water unit per CCF. One CCF is 748 gallons. On average, an average customer of SCV Water uses 14 CCF per month. So currently, potable water customers are paying $2.52 per CCF. The proposal is to increase that on July 1st to $2.77 per CCF. Leave this here for a second, then we'll move on. Next one is a proposed fixed charge. The average customer in the Santa Clarita Valley has a 3/4 inch meter. You can see this on your water bill, what size meter you have, so you can match it to this chart, which is here. It's on our website. It's also on your 218 notice. So the average, we're just talking averages right now. 3/4 inch is at $22.21 per month fixed charge currently, and would be increasing to $23.60 per month starting in July. Back to legacy debt. The current payment per month for legacy debt for Santa Clarita Water customers is $10.20 per month. That would be adjusted down to $7.89 per month, and that fee would remain flat from July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2030. For Valencia Water customers at a 3/4 inch meter, going from $6.50 to $7.32 over that same 5-year period. And for those business owners and property owners that have a private fire service charge and connection, these are the proposed rate changes for those customers. You'll see that they are going down across the board, at least for that first year. So one thing that we did want to talk about is what is known as the pass-through provision in Proposition 2, which says that as part of the rate setting process, and since SCV Water projects revenue needed in future years based on inflation, construction, and several factors, if a pass-through is needed, if actual inflation, actual construction inflation outpaces what has been projected, SCV Water can come back and implement a pass-through to adjust rates to those changed amounts. It can happen at any time from July the 1st through June the 30th. However, a few things that go along with that. The agency must mail a notice to customers at least 30 days prior to any pass-through. The pass-through can be applied to the fixed charge, the water use charge, or the private fire service charge, provided that, one, it cannot increase from what that rate is at that time, cannot be increased by more than 10% in any fiscal year. And it can never cost, the rate can never be more than what the actual cost of providing water service is. So essentially, as the expenses go, if inflation is wildly off, SCV Water can come back and notice the public about a pass-through, but that pass-through cannot be more than 10% and of what that current rate is, and it cannot be any more than what the actual cost of service is. So as we compare what different classes of customers are spending on average today, versus the proposal for fiscal year 2025, 2026. You'll see a variety of usage levels here from 6 CCF per month up to the average of 14. We'll note that this does not include legacy debt because, as I mentioned before, depending on where you live in the Santa Clarita Valley, who your predecessor agency was, your legacy debt charge will be different. So this chart only looks at fixed and variable. You'll see that on average, a 3/4 inch meter at 14 CCF per month currently is paying $57.49 a month, and that rate would go up by $4.93 per month to $62.42. But how does this stack up against other water providers in the region? We benchmarked with other water agencies, Glendale Water, Las Virgenes, LADWP, Palmdale, and Torrance that have similar service areas and similar staffs. And you'll see that the average of 62.42, which is our proposed base rate going forward on average, is still well below those of the other agencies. The darker green figures, again, they doesn't include our legacy debt, but the darker green figures include what the current 2024-2025 rate is for those agencies. It does not project what rates may be coming for them if that has not already been known. So as part of SCV Water's rate proposal, the team conducts what is called an affordability analysis. What it does is look at what the proposed rate is, including legacy debt for the three divisions, and puts it together with an average, a 3/4 inch meter, 14 CCF, including legacy debt, fixed charge, variable charge. What is the average monthly water bill? What is the average annual water bill? It then looks and compares that to California's CARE program, which is the California Alternate Rates for Energy program. It's a low-income assistance program for utilities, namely SoCal Gas and SoCal Edison. So SCV Water takes what those benchmark income levels and household size of 4 persons per household and takes that average monthly bill, average annual bill, and looks to then match that to an affordability matrix. That number provided by the US EPA says that a utility bill should be no more than 2.5% of a household's average annual income. So when you look at affordability and you look at what is considered to be qualifying for these assistance programs, you'll see across the board over the 5 years of the rate study period, each of those comes in at lower than the 2.5%. In fact, I believe that each of them are lower than 1.75%. So moving into some of our customer outreach that has been completed, and then I want to demo for you some of the resources that are available throughout this process. You can learn more and be kept informed along the way. So a reminder, we sent out our Prop 218 notice by mail on January the 21st, which opened a 45-day public comment period. We tentatively said January 28th, knowing that our local mailer here would get that to customers within 3 to 5 days. So we put it at 7 days. Opened the public comment period from January the 28th to April 1st through the end of the public hearing. That's a total of 63 days. We've developed a website, yourscvwater.com/rate-planning, where you can find all of the background information from the Proposition 218 notice and then further in depth. We couldn't fit everything on that mailer, so we talk more about some of the regulations, some of the legislation that SCV Water is complying with, some of the initiatives and more long-term planning efforts that we have in the Valley. Additional outreach and information about this meeting was posted and sent out through our media partners on January the 22nd. We sent out a Water Currents e-newsletter in our January edition that same week. And if you have not signed up for the Water Currents, it's a direct email that we send periodically to be kept in the know about events and initiatives such as this. We also posted on social media rather extensively to invite folks out to these meetings. I mentioned we've got the community workshop tonight. We have another one on March the 5th, and the public hearing, including the discussion on rate adoption, will be on April the 1st. 2025. Some resources that are available on that rate planning website. There's an ask a question form, and that allows you to type in a question directly to RDN, our ratepayer advocate. They will get back to you and answer your question about the rate setting process. You can find a water rate calculator, so you can go in and actually play around with, if I were to use X amount of water per month, and this is my size of my meter for my connection, what would that proposal be over any of the 5 fiscal years that we're talking about in this rate study? You'll see information on how to participate. It's everything that you need to know about filing a protest, what must be included, how to deliver it, how to mail it, and how to ensure that that gets counted. And then you can also read the 2 study reports. The first one at the top you'll see here is the retail water rate cost analysis and rate design study conducted by SCV Water staff. Below that, you'll see the ratepayer advocates report that analyzes that and gives it their opinion, their input into the process. There's a section of our website in our customer care department page on how to read your water bill. So it goes through what all the charts mean, what all the numbers mean, how they work with one another, and how that comes up to what your water bill is for the month. And then lastly, there's information on our ratepayer assistance program, which is available for qualifying customers. There's a limited number of spots each year to receive a $10 monthly credit on your statement. And each year, folks will need to reapply for that in July. So talk about the water rate calculator. Again, it's on our rate planning page. This is a snapshot of what it looks like. I'll take you through the website and show you where that is. And well, give me 1 second on that. Completely close PowerPoint. Here we go. Lastly, our ask a question section that's on our website. I'll show you where that is located, the information that we ask from you, and to ensure that you're connected with the ratepayer advocate. So from there, I will take us through the website, starting with our homepage, yourscvwater.com. You'll see at the top, there's a customer care section, and rate planning is here on the bottom left. Already had that loaded. So you'll see SCV Water is considering rate changes. All of our resources and links are on the right side. But as you scroll through, you'll see the Proposition 218 notice in English and Spanish, what our proposed rates are for each of the 4 types of charges. More information again on what the pass-through provision is. You'll see the box on how to participate, community meetings, public hearing, how to protest, exhaustion of administrative remedies, and how to go that route. And then again, information on the proposed water rate structure, the reports, and some FAQ at the end. So looking at the bill calculator first, I do want to show just a visual of that before we get into the question and answer session. When you load it up, it will default to Santa Clarita division. You'll be able to see on your bill, or if you remember from prior to 2018 who your water retailer was, it's either Castaic Lake Water Agency, Santa Clarita Water, either Newhall County Water or the Valencia Water Company. So let's say Newhall County Water, and let's go with the average of 3/4 inch a meter. This is what a current monthly bill is as of July 1st, 2024. Let's say I want to look at 2027. What does that proposal look like for me? At 14 CCF, let's say I only use 12. And you'll see here's what that would be for 2027 and what the proposal is for 2028. And you can play around with what is specific to you. Back here on our rate planning page at the top, this is where you can get to that, the water rate calculator. To ask a question opens to this page where there's a basic form. We ask you some information about your address and contact information. Really what we need is your name and your email address so we can get back to you. Type your question in, and that gets emailed directly to Ichiko and Anthony, who are on this call tonight, and they will respond back directly to you with answers to your questions. So opening back up PowerPoint, we'll now move into the question and answer portion. Thank you. I appreciate the time, and let's start going through some Q&A. Stop the share. First question we've got This may be for either Anthony Ichiko. Looks like Rochelle may benefit as well. Water rate cost comparison showing DWP rates the highest, but DWP bills may also collect rubbish collection on their water bills. Is the DWP rate that's shown here overinflated, or is it just their water charges?
It is just for water.
Again, feel free to type questions into the Q&A portion, to the chat as well. Anything, Ichiko, Anthony, that you wanted to touch on that I maybe didn't cover from a ratepayer advocate standpoint, or additional clarification that'd be helpful for attendees?
Kevin, I think you did a great job. So hopefully, people ask questions if they are not sure about anything. This is a great opportunity.
We'll leave the question and answer open for a few more minutes. Want to give everybody an opportunity. I know it was a lot of information that we went through. If anybody wants to put in here, I will bring this one back up. Another question. Okay, I'm just making sure that I understand it before I read it out. And let me bring up the slide that this relates to, because it's a visual. The question is about the private fire meter that was shown in the slide. Looked like it had two check valves. Was one of these the actual water meter? Let me bring up the photo. I'll be honest with you, Ken, who asked the question, I am not versed enough in the specifics of the engineering to know, but I will bring it up here on the screen so we can take a look. If anyone on the call has that information, or I'm happy to go talk with our engineering folk and get back to you.
Yeah, it's billed as a fire service, so it doesn't matter how many valves it has. It's one fire service.
Another question, and this one again relates to DWP. Reason we're answering it is because we're waiting for other questions to come in. Is this misleading? Does DWP bill every 2 months, or do they bill every month? Is that the cost per month?
They do bill every 2 months, but we brought it back to a single month charge.
So what is shown as the single month charge? All right, another couple of minutes for questions, and then I want to remind folks, I will go back through the presentation again to show the website to go through, the rate planning page for much more information. Again, if you have any questions, my information is in the chat, my email address. Any questions that come up after the fact that you're thinking about anytime between now and the end of the public hearing, you'll be able to ask those directly for Ichiko and Anthony on our website. Question coming in right now: are customers allowed to pull a low fire water amount cost free for testing?
There is no usage charge for fire services.
Can you elaborate on that, Rochelle, so I'm understanding? So this is the fixed charge, the fire service charge, and then it would be billed per water that's used.
If this is for a fire service, which is that special fire service charge, so one of those units that you showed the picture on, there's no usage charge, so they can test for free. It's just a monthly readiness to serve charge for that service.
Understood. Thank you. I'll give it another minute just for folks to ask any last lingering questions, and then we will close up. All right, seeing no further questions, I appreciate everybody's time tonight. Thank you, Anthony, Ichiko, Rochelle, Kathleen, and SCV Water staff for joining us tonight. Thank you to all of the attendees. Again, this session has been recorded, will be posted on the SCV Water website, on our rate planning website, as soon as possible, likely tomorrow after everything processes. We'll post it on social media as well. Identical presentation a month from now, March 5th. Feel free to come back. Feel free to go to our rate planning page, ask questions there, take a look at all the information, join us for a board of directors meeting, come to the public hearing. And I appreciate again your willingness and time tonight to come learn more about this important process. So thank you, everyone.